Welcome to the Bryce Eddy Show. Hey, so today my brother Siaka Massaquoi is back on, and we're going to talk news, and we're going to talk some craziness, dude.
Yeah,
Welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. Before we get going, let's talk. I know you had a tragedy in the family, and I think I'd love to, if you're up to it, share to the audience. First of all, my condolences, but you had a pretty deep loss, my friend, and
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, for those who haven't paid attention to my social media feeds, because I haven't said I don't think anything about it on the shows yet. I took a little break right after that from recording, but yeah, my dad died, and my dad, who I absolutely love. We weren't as close as we needed to be. Because my parents were divorced when I was 13, and my dad became a little bit distracted as a result of that. Dealing with all those issues. Now my parents ended up getting back together, and
Really?
from when I turned 26 on, they were married and remained married until my mom's death about 5 years ago from Alzheimer's, and it, so. As a result of that, I was really, my joke is that I was raised by wolves, but I was really largely on my own. And
Mm,
so, my dad was not somebody that I, like thought to call and reach out to and things like
right,
that,
right.
because, during a lot of those years, he was largely absent. Now, it wasn't entirely his fault because, I was also like, I didn't tell him anything. I was a very independent kid. I just
Right.
went and did my stuff, and I, grew up quickly and, got into business and kind of went on my way. We didn't have bad blood. There was nothing there. And in, the last several years, he lived here in Idaho. They moved here a couple of years before us, with my sister and my niece. And so we were, it's not that we weren't close. It just neither one of us was, like super proactive in spending
Mhm.
time together. And a lot of that, again, I think it was, habits as much as anything else. I was doing my life, and everybody knows I lead a pretty crazy schedule and work a lot and travel a lot and all that stuff, but my dad wasn't somebody that I called, and in a lot of ways I regret that. It's interesting, I was with a friend colleague and driving, and she told me, you need to call your dad more, and
Mhm.
he had called then like 2 minutes later, and
Wow.
basically said the same thing, like, we don't talk enough, and I feel bad about it, and I haven't
Mhm.
been doing that. So in the last couple of months, we talked more than normal. So that was really good, and I think that there's certainly some spiritual sensitivity on her part, and some providence in that, and that's cool. And so we had more conversations than we would have otherwise, and he thankfully came over a couple of weeks before, came to church with my sister and niece, and they came and saw our new place and hung out, and we went to lunch and everything, and that was kind of the last time we really spoke, because then Saturday a couple of weeks ago, I got a text message from my sister that he had a heart attack, and that she had rushed him to the hospital, and they were optimistic. They were going to work on putting a stent in, and they were optimistic that, hey, strong guy. I mean, my dad, and I was telling you this, and not everybody knows, but my dad had polio when he was 2 years old, and was either on crutches the majority of my life growing up, and into I mean, really just up until maybe about 10 years ago, he was always on crutches and braces, and, kind of walking and, getting after it. And then he went into a wheelchair. As soon as like
Mhm.
wheelchairs got fast, and,
Mm.
and they were sleek, light, and, made out of like titanium and things like that. And he got into a wheelchair, and he liked that because, he's zipping around fast,
Right.
and also he's having, getting older and shoulder problems and things like that. So a little bit easier than walking around in crutches. But anyway, he Worked out every day, fit, no heart disease in our family, lots of longevity. So there was, no comorbidities. I mean, his, lab numbers and all that stuff, looked good. Even though, wasn't a regular guy going to the doctor, everything seemed like, man, by every indication, another 20 years. What's interesting is, I had some thoughts the last time he's here, like, wow, it's going to be rough on my sister when he does start to really deteriorate because,
Hmm.
guy in a wheelchair and dealing with my dad in that capacity, especially guys so energetic and so active, that's going to be rough. And I was, kind of reflecting on, all right, what does that mean? We're probably going to have to get them some help and, participate more in caring for him. And a couple weeks later, boom, I get this call and
Mm.
he has some complications. They couldn't put a stent in. I guess, you can only do that in a certain period of time. But if the symptoms were lasting too long, it's impossible to put a stent. And so they, couldn't do it. Then he ended up having a bunch of blood clotting because of just
Mhm.
the time and the length of the issue going on. So it
Mm.
must have been, my dad was a tough guy, probably wasn't feeling all that great for a while and wasn't paying attention to it or wasn't saying anything or, whatever. But some of those clots were breaking loose. And so I went into the hospital to visit him and he went immediately, like moments before I walked in, he went into
Oh,
distress and, had a whole bunch of doctors and nurses working on him for the next several hours. And, they finally got him. I mean, he was like fighting the, hospital staff because he was, hopped up on drugs. And I mean, he was like sitting up trying to let me go and, all stuff. So it's pretty, traumatic and sad to
right.
watch that. But, he was freaking out and, not sure that he knew that I was there, or was conscious of it, but, I'm glad I was there. But then he, they put him, under sedation and got him stable. And we're going to do some scans to see about fishing out some of those clots and, all that. And then, that next morning he had another heart attack and that was it. So,
Wow.
yeah. So I'm
Wow.
sad there was a lot of things that I wish I had talked about just in reflecting even on, just life history things and,
Mhm.
things that we never really got deep in talking about, in his life. I mean, there's certain, I knew during certain general periods what he was doing, even for work, he was a pastor when I was growing up, but, having a divorce at, when I was 13 and, all that stuff kind of interrupts a ministry. And so, of course, it
Yeah.
did. And he went into some general sales, but, a lot of stuff don't really remember or don't know. It would have been nice to have those conversations. And then, he ended up working for Brian Buffini, and Brian Buffini is a real like success and sales trainer, kind of a Tony Robbins in the real estate world, and really neat guy. And Brian had a tremendous effect on my dad and on my parents, and so much of what my dad became in later years was the influence of Brian and working around many of those really great people, who are going to come out here. We're going to have a celebration of life here in
Mhm.
April for him, and it's going to be a cool weekend because that same weekend my daughters and my son-in-law were set to be performing at our cigar lounge that I'm an owner in here in town. And they were going to be performing that weekend anyway. So we're going to have a daytime celebration of life. My dad was cremated. He, didn't really want the funeral type thing. Nor did we. So he liked the idea of just celebrating his life. So we're going to do that. Friends will come in from all over the country. My dad was kind of beloved by everybody. Super, kind of just charming and kind guy.
Friendly guy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just personable, sweet, engaging, great listener, just, wonderful dude. And that was really who he was. So, you know, whew, makes me emotional, but there'll be a ton of people in town and it'll be cool. And it'll be a neat thing too, to have the girls and John perform. So it'll be sweet. But
That's beautiful,
anyway,
man.
There you go. I think that's the fifth time I've cried on my show, but there you go.
Hey, man, if there's any time to cry, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, I have.
This is it.
Yeah, no. Obviously, I'm not afraid of emotion, but it's wild to have had something so unexpected and so quick go down in our family, and we miss him.
Yeah. Let me ask you, can I ask you a couple questions?
Yeah, sure.
Um, it sounds like very similar with me. My dad, like, he wasn't there. I knew who he was. He wasn't there. And then he passed. We talked probably a month before he passed. And in the long run, and you talked about history. I didn't start finding out about a lot of my history till the last 4 years. Do you, when you were growing up, did you, and this is something I did, but I'm wondering for you, did you go, okay, if I'm ever in this situation to be a father, I'm going to do it, you know, differently, because you may not want to feel the way, you felt when he wasn't there, or feeling like you looking forward to the opportunity to kind of make up for the things that you didn't have with your dad not being around in the same way. Did you ever think that way?
Oh yeah, certainly. And I think that's the healthy way to look at things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Famously, I think it was Tony Robbins that told this story about two brothers of a super abusive alcoholic father, right? And the brothers, one became a wild success, and the other alcoholic abuser and total failure. And they both came up with the same question, or the same answer to the question, "Hey, why'd you end up the way you ended up?" And they both were like, "Well, how could I not with a father like that?" You
Mm,
know. So you choose
mm,
your response, right? And we are
mm,
response able, right? We're responsible for the choices that we make, and you can use the way you grew up as an excuse, right? Or you can say, "Hey, I'm going to do this differently," and you can
mm,
make that choice and go, "I'm going to go down this path or that path." And my dad, when we were growing up, I mean, he was, many respects, I had my early childhood was awesome. My dad is a loving, awesome dude in all kinds of ways. Even with all the mistakes that were made and everything there. But yeah, I also hold myself responsible for, as a kid. I definitely didn't pursue the relationship
mm,
that could have been there with my dad when I was young, because I was trying to make it on my own and survive, and some of that is also my personality type and everything else. But so we had a healthy relationship and a friendship and all that stuff. But yeah, it was um, definitely, and I know it was for you. It puts an indelible mark on you, how
yeah.
you were raised, and it does for everybody. And then
Mhm.
you choose, your path from there. And some people, boy, and this is the truth in life. I have seen people raised in what we would be saying were the most awesome circumstances ever, and truly, I mean, I know families very intimately that were pretty functional, and
Yeah.
pretty awesome and pretty amazing. And one of their kids or two of their kids ended up going sideways, and by all, like, intimate knowledge that I had, because some of these were families that I directly observed and hung in their homes and spent the night and all that stuff. People choose for themselves, and
Mhm.
all the influence that you give your kids only goes certain lengths into
Yeah.
shaping who they are.
Yeah.
You can give them every advantage, and they can still choose the wrong thing. So you can use the circumstances in which you were raised, for better or for worse.
And last question, and thank you for saying that, because yeah, yeah, I feel like I'm excited to have Xavier and this other kid coming, so that I can be the father,
Yeah,
I didn't have.
amen.
What was your father's first name?
Barth.
Bart.
Barth. Like
Bart.
like Bartholomew, only
Oh,
short.
Bartholomew. Oh, so Barth Eddy.
Barth Eddy. You got it.
Can we do a moment of silence for Barth Eddy?
Yeah, man.
All right.
Amen,
That's
brother.
good. Yeah, you got it,
Thank you
man.
for that.
All right. Yeah, let's get into it. That was I think it was a proper way to start. Proper way to
Yeah.
start.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Well, thank you.
Yeah, love you, man.
Yeah,
Love
love you too. Well, hey, on a much lighter note, we have, we still are in the battle against some real lunatics, and
Yes, yes,
I
we
know you
are.
and I both wanted to highlight and hit a story. You know, 2 state reps, and this is proof that almost anybody can get into politics. And there,
Almost.
yeah, and there are 2 state reps, one from Washington State and one from Pennsylvania that,
Oh, wait, right here.
yeah, that are
Right at the top.
you know, weighing in on the debate with all the transgender stuff. You know, Donald Trump is ending via federal executive order the funding, and he's doing it. You know, money drives a lot of things. It's why
Oh yeah.
Hawaii moved their drinking age to 21 after being 18 for many, many years, is they just said, hey, you know, we're not going to give you federal funds unless you make this adjustment. And
Mhm.
so you can use those federal funds for good things. You can use them for bad things. They've largely been used for bad things over the years, but Trump is using those federal funds to say, hey, no more dudes, you know, dressed up in women's sports uniforms competing against women. And out of Pennsylvania,
Mm.
this lawmaker is essentially saying, and let me get the little article quote here. She is saying that females are athletically equal to males. Uh, she's saying female bodies are just as strong and fast as male bodies. That's I believe a direct quote.
Yeah, yeah.
Which you know, I did a little, if people are watching my social media, I did a little day of gratitude for her because I want those people to continue to say such ludicrous things.
Yeah,
If they continue to do that, they are going to be in political exile for the next 20 years at least.
at least.
Because anybody on the planet, except for maybe you know, some girl that's grown up watching, you know, superhero, you know, Marvel women, you know, knows,
100 pounds.
yeah, that men are, you know, exceptionally stronger than women. And you know, again, there are strong women and there are weak men. But even the weakest of men and the strongest of women are a lot closer than the strongest of men and the strongest of women.
Oh
And
yeah.
you can see that in any athletic endeavor. You can see that in things where everything is measured from, you know, speed to strength to all that stuff. It is
Lung capacity.
yeah, I mean, every little bone structure, bone strength, just the leverage that we can apply based on the structures of the male body. I mean, everything. We can bring more athletic prowess over and over again in everything. You know, and it doesn't. I mean, and Serena Williams. You remember? You
Yeah.
know, what's his name? Getting in trouble for saying that, oh no, you know, she'd be beaten in straight sets if she went against, you know,
Yeah.
one of the you know, lower ranked men. And
John McEnroe.
yeah, John McEnroe said that, and everybody was like, "How dare you?" And they tried to cancel him. And then Serena Williams came out and said, "Oh no, that's absolutely
Yeah.
true."
She's like the 158th guy could just
Yeah, well,
walk in.
I think the 700th and something played one of them and won in
Yeah.
straight sets.
Yeah.
And yeah, and many years ago they had a drunken dude that smoked cigarettes every day that used to be a pro tennis player play the number one ranked woman in the world, and he
No way.
beat her in straight sets. And that's been floating around the internet recently. But the guy was like 50, and he was a smoker and drinker, and he took puffs of his cigarette in between and cleaned her clock.
Oh, come on.
Yeah,
Come on.
and obviously it's not, you know, we're not here to disparage women, and this isn't, you know, misogyny. This
No.
is just fact.
Reality.
It's just reality. It's just
Yeah.
the you know, the absolute truth. And you know, and I train you know, both men and women in jujitsu and defensive tactics. And you know, anybody who trains in that world, you know,
Just
as a
knows.
female understands it. You know, they're under no delusions. It's these liberals that are, drunks that imagine otherwise because they've never had to feel or face the strength of a man.
Well, and you know what I noticed a lot of times, even as these, it's a lot of them's led by these female liberals, and if you look at them, and I don't know their full backgrounds, but outside of like the WNBA, most of the time, and what's that one lesbian chick on the U.S. soccer team that is out now? But outside of that, usually the people caping for this are ones that have never played sports at any type of level. So they
Yeah.
actually they've never lived and experienced what it's like to really come up against a man on a different side, like in practice or just kind of playing in the ballpark or something.
Right.
So I find it really laughable. They use the argument, "Hey, you're a man, you can't tell us to do with our bodies," and I'm like, "You're not an athlete. You shouldn't tell athletes what they should do with theirs. Then, if that's your
Yeah.
standard,
Well,
right?"
it's funny. But the athletes that you just mentioned that do advocate, that's envy, right? And
Yeah.
that is a play, a financial play for them.
Yes.
They because remember, all of them are arguing for equal pay. These male soccer players get paid X, and we get paid this, or like the WNBA, which is subsidized by the other
Yeah.
league. They're complaining that they don't get paid much. Well, they don't get eyeballs. They just by the economics of it, it cannot be equal pay. They do not bring in equal audiences. Nobody really wants to watch, outside of very, very few exceptions, nobody really wants to invest their time watching female sports. And
Yeah.
and again, it's not that we don't like watching female, well, except for maybe beach volleyball. I think that might be the exception. No, it doesn't get the male audience, which is
Yeah.
who drives sports, right? And
Well,
that makes sense.
I think to myself, I'm like, okay, soccer is one of the only sports actually that I can watch from the female sport, soccer and volleyball, that I can watch where it like kind of just for the visual of soccer, it looks equal in a sense to men because they
Right.
are all equal. But like, this argument, especially with the WNBA, I'm like, okay, I just saw Vince Carter dunk in a way that he could put his arm into the hoop. And then I turn over here and y'all can barely make layups. Like,
Yeah.
just from a standpoint of like, what type of movie would you want to watch? The one where the guy like Arnold has all the guns taking out everyone, or the one where the guy doesn't barely know how to shoot and he's supposed to be the bad, the bad.
Yeah. I mean,
in the
just
movie.
on what you're pointing to is just the sheer, athletic intensity of something.
Yeah.
I mean, watching a dude dunk a basketball is certainly more
Oof.
interesting than a couple of gals, shooting free throws.
Missing layups, missing
Yeah,
layups. 'Cause
yeah.
that I'm sorry. I hope anyone who likes the WNBA don't take it the wrong way, but
Well, nobody does. You'll offend the one fan.
I mean, you ever watch these highlights and like they have that one Reese girl who's like she's talking about all this money that she's supposed to deserve to have. And I saw her highlight or low light tape, and I mean the level of misses in the layups are like this can't to me it's like this can't be professional. If this
Yeah.
is the level that is professional and you're playing like this, like
I'm gonna see. I think we
ugh,
can. I think we can clip this out and embed this. But
yes,
there
please.
is a very, very funny, and I'll make a little note for Cassie to put this in here. But there is a wonderful clip, and I think it's like Family Guy or something like that on the WNBA. But we'll clip this and post it in here. But it is hilarious because it's like pun after pun and funny little, we'll let the fan decide, they command $7,000 a year, and the whole thing is just hilarious. But anyway, I'll pause now. Maybe we
Put it
can
here.
this. Yeah.
And at the top of the second half, it's 16-9. Easton leads the scoring with 4.
And that's why she commands $7,000 a year. These gals sure do make it look difficult.
But is having this minor skill worth being so unattractive? That's for the fan to decide.
Yay! Oh, that was great.
Yeah. But absolutely hilarious. And true. Yeah, it's just not that exciting. You're just not going to want to watch it. Especially because look, the truth is the female sports that do get the eyeballs, because we got a male audience, it's because the women are, good looking, or dressed in beach volleyball beach attire, and they're shapely, and the WNBA and also for the most part soccer doesn't even get that.
No.
And then the soccer team, when you had the women's soccer team go up against just a boys, it was like a boys high school soccer team, they lost. And
they got like 11-1 or 2 or something like that.
Yeah, and then there was a clip that people can watch of a professional male soccer player taking on the entire team and running through
just
them,
dancing,
and scoring, and just boom, 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 boom,
he was just dancing.
The entire team was defending against him, and he beat them.
Wow.
And so the absurdity of these folks really benefits us, and the more that they do that, the better. But oh yeah, and
I was gonna say the absurdity. So they'll find any way to do that. First they'll say like, hey, are all the bodies the same? And then over with the rep over in Washington State, Christine Reeves, she took another route. She says it's just like, to stop men from playing against women, it's just like Jim Crow segregation. So it's either racism or lack of science. I don't know, man. This stuff's crazy. If it's not, we're all the same. It's because of racism. Somehow it gets in there on the left. Like they only have a few bullets in their gun. It's like racism is one. It's racism, sexism.
Yeah, they want to equate us accepting dudes in dresses, and dudes in restrooms and locker rooms and all that stuff to the next civil rights battle.
Yeah.
And it's absurd. We're talking about people with mental illness, and again, we can remind the audience, most of these folks are self-admitted sexual deviants, and many of them are interested in they've got autogynephilia, which is the desire. It makes them feel sexual arousal to dress as females.
Pretty.
And that drives a lot of it. And then you watch over and over again, these men were ranked poorly in the male version of their sport, and then ran over and then dominated the female version of it, which again tells you how dumb Lindsey Williams, state senator out of Philadelphia, is.
Yes, and Christine Reeves, you can add on top of that too, because this is just. But you're right, man. Like, hey, to me at this point, just like we were watching Jasmine Crockett and AOC speak, keep going, guys. Keep going. This is they're going to be there. You know how they say the left is eating each other now, and it has like the left civil war. If you want to see the best reality TV that's going on, is a Democratic civil war, but I'm here to watch it. Keep going. Keep getting upset. Keep jumping on it. Somebody's not woke enough. It's great. Let's go.
Tim Walz.
Tampon Tim.
Yes, Tampon Tim, the most lackluster VP candidate ever, alongside
Spirit
the most lackluster and terrible presidential candidate the Democrats ever ran. He came out in a speech just a day or two ago saying that they need to double down on DEI. Yeah. They need to double down on woke, and the reason that they lost was they weren't committed to that cause enough. And I, for one, agree with them. They need to
100%.
double down on this stuff. Yes. They need to tell us why men can get pregnant more.
Yes, please keep going, guys. Please, for the love of everything that you believe in, don't pull back. Yes, don't go Gavin. Don't go Gavin. Don't go Gavin.
Amen. Well. The other thing that Governor Tim Walz has said recently is that we need a shadow government. Now, what's interesting about that is we already do, and that's what the deep state is. And all these people who think that we're conspiracy theorists for saying that there's a deep state or a shadow government that really does try to run things or counteract what Trump did in the first term. It's crazy that we're called conspiracy theorists for suggesting that that's what's happening. And here, Governor Walz is advocating for exactly that.
Well, and I don't know where he's been. I know where he's been. He's playing this silly game of like, we want you guys to be comfortable with obstruction from unelected officials, and
Yeah.
that's really what that's part of outside of cutting up their money spigot, their tax dollars spigot. That's what's going on by cutting all these programs and all this waste, that the bureaucrats that are unelected that end up slowing a process down or stopping the process altogether. That is the shadow government. That is the deep state. And we're watching it be chopped up. And it's really interesting because you start to see, much like the people going after Elon, who was the darling, about 6 to 8 years ago of the left. Now he's a pariah. They're showing the people who they are so much. Again, the earlier story, an earlier piece. Keep going, guys. Keep
Yeah.
going. Keep saying things that people will eventually, because I do believe that these emotional people, as these guys are trying to hold on to power, the emotional people that have followed them will eventually will back away, because their emotion is usually based on a one topic thing. Like Elon's bad, Trump is bad. But then when they keep pushing like tampons in bathrooms, you're like, no, Trump is bad. You're like, yes, but tampons in bathrooms. And they're like, I don't shadow government. This is Trump is bad, right? So if you can't keep feeding them the thing they need, they're going to eventually go, I'm just going to either sit out or let me really go look and see what the other side's talking about.
Yeah, well, it's really going to be interesting too, because when you watched the Gavin Newsom Charlie Kirk interview, when Gavin said some negative things about going too far in the trans stuff, which of course he could not have gone far enough back when he was deciding that he needed to be left. Now he's all of a sudden going to try to.
It's unfair.
He's going to try to retool himself to be this moderate all of a sudden, because he sees the writing on the wall and he's a very slick politician. So he's there. He'll take whatever position he can to accumulate power. And that's who that guy is. He's a complete lizard person.
Even CNN called him out on a highlight reel about his Latinx statement. And it was so glorious. And the fact that I saw it on CNN, my brain almost popped, but I realized they're losing so much money and eyes. They're good doing anything as well. But hey,
so but we're going to see more of that, because they created this whole class of folks that believe if you call somebody by their old name, you're dead naming, or or if you don't use their pronouns, or all stuff. That group isn't going away. I mean, you raised a whole generation of knuckleheads. They're not going to change. And they were the committed political activists, and they were the useful idiots and rabble rousers. Now they're going to be against these folks if they abandon. So I think the left and the Democrat, uniparty type folks and all that are they are really caught in a catch-22. They're alienating their base if they go to the middle. But if they don't go to the middle, who's going to really vote for them on the independent side? So they're, they are going to be lost. I think they're going to be in political exile for a while.
Yeah.
So
Dude,
go ahead.
I was going to say, like, speaking of voting, but go ahead to the next one, because Trump dropped a bomb on his executive order while everyone was worried about signal chats. He signed an executive order requiring proof of citizenship in order to vote in federal elections. Here we go. And some of the points in there I saw from Benny Johnson posted. Some of the points also include paper ballots, so they can track nothing going to be electronic, but paper ballots have to be the backup. If states don't want to comply with this, they don't get federal money. Back to your Hawaii moving up from 18 to 21. And the final piece of resistance, as I like to say, is that he also mentioned that he will release information proving that he was cheated out of 2020, which is a domino effect that will affect so many Americans, especially us J6ers.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be incredible. I've said from the beginning, when I was asked, okay, what does the administration need to do? As quickly as possible. And, I've said it on 100 different shows, but cleaning up our voting system is going to lock us in for a while, because without the cheating, without the shenanigans, without the counting ballots. I mean, I talked to a couple of guys, David Shepard being one of them, who ran for a state seat in California in the Bakersfield area,
Mhm.
and he was cheated by California out of that. They kept challenging it. He was so many votes ahead, and then they kept counting. And then they kept counting, and then they kept counting, and for 30 days, all they did is get it down to where he was down 9 votes.
They're like,
and
oops.
and the judges and everything said, nope, nope, we're calling it now. That's it, but he was up thousands of votes
Wow.
in the counting up until they play those games. We know they cheat. We know they
Oh yeah.
will find the ballots until they win. And so the more we don't allow that, the more it is paper ballots, the more we are the day of, like even every other country does. They will not be able to win without cheating.
Let me ask you a question on that, right? So let's say they do that, they're able to, because a lot of this stuff's on record. Do they, if Trump puts out 2020, we see the things that we have known, we've looked into, and now it's solidified. Is there a retroactive type of situation where you have people who are signing, or coming to crafting legislation and signing bills where retroactively we can go back and go, okay, well, we got to throw these bills away? Like, did I really lose my election in 2022 in California? It's like, is there something? Because like Joe Biden, everything he did then is fraudulent. So
Yeah.
we paid for it. Like what?
It's a wonderful thought exercise, but I don't
Yeah.
see how practically you could do that.
Mm,
I think what we need to do, it's like the injury has already occurred. Now let's
mm,
stem the bleeding and let's heal it. But the scars from it are there. We cannot erase that. We can't,
yeah.
and it would be a wonderful idea. And all the QAnon and Hopium people were like, any second Trump is going to roll on with tanks and the
Yeah.
military is,
Yeah.
and they realize, and they've been
They're gonna
setting this.
arrest Gavin.
They're gonna, yeah, and they got Tom Hanks in a building somewhere under arrest for pedophilia.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, guys, yeah, none of that was happening, and they were well-meaning, wonderful people who got swallowed up in all kinds of dumb stuff.
Yeah.
But no, we can't practically go back. We have to go forward, and we've got to
Mhm.
clean things up and straighten things out. Generational problems require generational solutions. Getting out of this dark point in history, it can be faster than you imagine, but it
Mhm.
is not fast.
Yeah, that's why actually something I know is I said this to Charlotte. I'm like, wow, for all the time we can look, if we talk about this history, we've done it on the show. We go 65 Civil Rights Act changed everything, the free love push in the 70s and in the colleges, psychology, all this different stuff we can bring into play. But to be living at the time now and seeing how it's turning around so much faster than the time it took to really debase the culture into the state that it's in.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. Like, I can only say it's the Lord, because he works that quickly. And I love that we're sitting in this moment right now, because it really blows my mind how quickly we can actually see it turn around from how, even the last 4 years, for how lost and dark that it seemed, that the light, once it shines in, it's like boom, it starts to open up, and you're like, oh, I got to clean that corner. It's amazing. It's amazing, Bryce, that we live in a time right
Yeah.
now as we do.
Yeah, true. Well, I'm excited, and I'll tease it now because I'm going to be talking to Dr. Keith Rose, the great Dr. Keith Rose, who, former intelligence guy. That he's been on the show many times. For people who are new to the show, he's really an incredible character, very tied into the intelligence community, and we're going to talk about this Signal affair.
Oh yeah.
It's being positioned that Signal was some kind of breach, that Signal wasn't used by our administration and the administration before, and the CIA and other organizations within our government. Signal was, and many people listening use it. Was the messaging app, because it is encrypted on both ends, that a lot of folks use. Use it in the security business. There's all kinds of reasons for it, and the brief of the story is this, and I'll tease it because it was a complete setup. and it was
you know what?
it completely engineered to try to discredit the new administration here and discredit and get rid of Pete Hegseth, who is upending our military. And we're going to name some names, and it's going to be really fun because there's a lot of evidence that the patriots in the intelligence movement have, they're doing some good work. We'll put it that, and I'll save the rest of it for Keith. But it is not what they are saying it was. And again, Signal was used by the Biden administration heavily, and it's part of their communications. And we're going to see that this thing was a game, played by the deep state.
So I think it was a setup, but I think they knew. Can I put on my my tinfoil jacket real quick? I just want to. Yeah. Okay. So, and it's funny because something else came across my DMs and Instagram where I thought this. So I thought when it came out, I thought one of two things was happening here. Either the Trump administration was trying to weed someone out, right, to know that they still had people in, because Trump faced that so much in his first term. Or two, that they were going after specifically this reporter to kind of throw him off and to discredit the Atlantic and what he's been doing because of all the work that anti-Trump work. Now, I got from a friend of mine online, they were like, Alex Wong is the individual who added Jeffrey Goldblum to Signal chat. Wong is Mike Waltz's national security advisor. Laura Loomer apparently went on a dive on this. Wong is a Chinese deputy national security advisor, is married to U.S. attorney Candace Chu Wong, a Chinese woman who was one of the key attorneys involved in prosecuting, guess who? J6ers. So that's just a little taste. I'm sure that the great doctor will get further in from there, but I also, the last thing, when I saw they had that hearing, which was already scheduled before the Signal stuff came out, and the liberals would have had nothing to talk about except for, hey, you guys are being successful stopping pirates that the other guy didn't do. If people go back and watch Tulsi Gabbard when she was like smooth as butter, cool as a cucumber, whatever other analogy you want to do. I saw a few times where she looked like she was trying to hold in a laugh. That's just me. People go check it out again. I got the jacket on. So I saw her when she was like, y'all don't know what we're doing to you guys right now. And I saw that. I'm like, there's something else going on. And of course, then the next day you see Trump do the election and no one said anything about it, which tells me that they weren't paying attention. And, when it comes and hits, then it's going to be too late. But yeah.
I'm all for 3D chess. I'm all for conspiracy theories that turn out to be true. There's many of them.
Spoiler alert.
We'll see, man. It's gonna be fun to watch this one, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Dr. Keith Rose says. Well,
it's
cool.
Cool.
Well, hey, brother, I appreciate you. I love you. Thank you for coming on the show, and of course, we're going to keep this up. But I wanted to end real quick. There's been some news over at the Daily Wire. Jeremy Boring is stepping out of his role. There's a lot of conspiracies surrounding that, but I know you work there, and you were the Black Jeremy. So
I'll always be Black Jeremy. Come on now.
No, I know you've got all kinds of other things in the in the hopper, and you're there at the Daily Wire, and will continue to be there. And I know you've really enjoyed it. But yeah, what's happening? What can you say?
Well, so I can say for sure they're not out of money. I know there was rumors going around for certain people saying, and it's always funny how this new version of the National Enquirer or the tabloid magazines, as an individual, they say, well, confirmed, unconfirmed, not confirmed, but the rumors are the thing, and then so they could be 50%
rumors or suggesting
so it's like, I'd say what people have seen out there, 50% of it is true, and the other 50% is Antarctica off. Like it's so off that it's part of the salaciousness. But I personally want to give a shout out to Jeremy. He by hiring me for this part, he helped change my family's life, helped get us out of Los Angeles. Was able to come to Tennessee and put my family in a more protected area. But at the same time, I do see that I think we're gonna see more different content out there. I think it's gonna, possibly open up some, just kind of different ways of moving that I believe that the conservative, Republican, freedom-minded media movement could need an injection of. Because I think if anyone looks at anytime a CEO leaves a company, for the company to move on, they always kind of restructure and come out with a blast to kind of move it in a different direction, and usually kind of quickly, right? Because they want to move away from controversy. So I see this as a possibility in here. I don't know anything about details of the things they people thought about Jeremy or like what was said between. I don't know any of that, but I look at it, a little bit of this is looking at the just the tea leaves and going, I think they're going to be moving in a pretty explosive and media explosive and media content direction, and that can only be good for what we're trying to accomplish when it comes down to capturing the culture.
Yeah, I think that's going to be exciting for you, because they're going to have to make some good content investments and retool a few things because they want to show that this was a good decision, made for the benefit of the company. And listen, I mean, there's going to be all kinds of rumors surrounding Jeremy and behavior and all that stuff, and you got to take all that with a grain of salt. And
Right.
and oh, by the way, being a tough leader and everything is many of the reasons why companies reach the heights and intensity that they do as quickly as they do. So even if some of those things are true, it's not all bad. And much respect to Daily Wire, much respect to Jeremy Boring and what he and Ben Shapiro put together. And God bless you and the changes that'll be happening over there. It's going to be, I think, really exciting for everybody all the way around.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, hey, man, remind everybody how we follow and support you. And, this was a fun time. I appreciate you.
As always, I'm just so happy to be here, and I'm glad we got to catch up. Again, condolences to your father and your family. If anyone wants to check out and see what I'm up to and all the craziness that I toss out there on social media, on X, you can check me out at _Siaka Massaquoi, Instagram, Siaka_Massaquoi. And if you like to still go to defendsiaka.com, we're still paying off all those bills. But, another little spoiler alert, lawyers now have contacted and they are actively trying to go get restitution for Jay Sixer. So pray for that, everybody.
Good. Yeah, well, you guys are due it for the lawfare that the Biden administration put you guys through, and God bless you and all of that. And hey, man, we are out. To God be the glory.
Peace.
Hey, thank you for watching or listening to this show. If you are someone who listens to us on the podcast apps, please go to our Rumble channel. Even if you're not going to watch us there, we'd appreciate you hitting subscribe. We want to boost those numbers up and make sure that channel continues to grow. But again, thank you so much for listening to us.